Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Button Mash, episode, what we're gonna say is 12. Yeah, hi. Sorry. We'll get back to the episode here. This is episode 11. Kind of forgot where I was in the timeline, but yeah, this is actually episode 11. Okay, back to the show. Bye. My name is Arif, and thank you so much for joining us today. And today I have a very special guest, a biohacker, Deepak Saini. Did I say that correctly?
Deepak Saini.
Deepak Saini. So, a very unique career with a very interesting background on how you got to this point, and I'm very excited because you and I are very similar in this way, where you took a very kind of like left turn from like on paper from where you started to where you are now. And I'm sure so many people are very interested to understand not only your profession, but also the pathway in which you got to it and how you're constantly driving through it. So why don't you go ahead and give us a background on what you do now, and we'll get into your pathing over to there a little bit later on.
Sure. So right now I'm a health, performance, and longevity coach. So what does that mean? So basically, I help people. I feel that there's an exceptional person inside of everyone. So I help people reduce their limiting beliefs so they can find that exceptional person and draw it out of themselves. So that could mean, could just mean weight loss or body composition. It could mean, cognitive performance, neurological performance, could be sleeping better, could be performing better in the boardroom, in the bedroom, and it could mean people who want to live healthy a really long time. And I have personal goals to be a centenarian plus, so some people want to come on that journey with me as well. So that's what I do now. But yes, you're correct. I got here in a very unorthodox way, for sure.
Yes, absolutely. And to be a centenarian, I've heard from multiple sources and multiple times that scientists do believe that the person to exceed well over like 100, like, getting into that like 120, 150-ish range has already been born. And with your objective to be a centenarian, how far into that pool are you wanting to get to?
Well, ideally, I'd like to go as far as possible. The reason, some people have thrown out 180 at least, or 150 is, like you said, kids being born now, 150 should be easy for them with technology, etc. So why am I limiting myself to 100, maybe a little bit more? I think two things. One, there's plenty I know I could do right now. Resources aren't necessarily there at this moment to start the reversing the clock now. And two, when we'll get into it, I'm sure shortly, I've done a lot of damage to myself in my previous, so I think that'll eventually catch up to me. So I certainly think I can make 100 plus, maybe 110, but that 120 or more, maybe not realistic with what I've gone through in the past and sort of probably the damage I've done to myself earlier in my life.
Right. And with your goal to live this long, is there any kind of major end goal with this idea of getting to be a centenarian, like beyond just being able to say you did it? Is there like are you hoping to see something like a world event? We're living right now for the purposes of YouTube and not being demonetized, we're going to call this an in-game world event. Are you hoping to see something? Are you hoping to like experience something more? Or is it just the overall experience of just being able to have seen so much go by?
I think the overall experience, but really, to pass on knowledge and wisdom to the not next generation, but my great grandkids. I'd like to see them and be again, and many people think when about aging, they think of like, someone, maybe their grandparents are 80, 90 in a home, dementia, physically frail, etc. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about having my mental wits, having, my physical performance, stand-up paddleboarding, still going for a run or hiking with my great grandkids, and being able to pick up my great grandkids, maybe 40, 50 pounds, and be able to hoist them over my head and having still that kind of functional strength. So that's what I'm talking about when I'm talking about, centenarian plus.
Yeah, that's very, very cool. Now, looking from previous conversations you and I had, obviously that's how we got you onto the show here, but also looking through your biography and your history, one of the more interesting titles you had in your lineup of credentials, which is very, very extensive, and the one that really grabbed my attention was the BioHacker one. Now, can you go into what is biohacking and what exactly it is like you're doing with this system? Is it, I don't even know, is it a system?
Yeah, it kind of is a system. So I guess a definition, there's many definitions of biohacking, but essentially better living through science, I guess would be a very simplified terminology. So basically, I'm curious, and I think we'll get into how I came to get to that point. But yeah, I just want better performance, not only for myself. I'm not going to get to 100 plus without trying to improve my performance in many aspects of my life. So that's what I'm working on personally, and what again my clients ask me to help them with as well. So some of the things so I track a lot of things. I use metrics. We can maybe get into that, excuse me, a little bit more later, but I track various things, see what affects me, what affects my biology, what doesn't, and what affects my performance. And then I use, use supplements, some more common, some not so common, and technology devices to enhance that performance, essentially.
So you're kind of like those people we see in the gym with the log books just on. What's funny? You're like those people in the gym books who log all their performance, but super maxed out.
Yeah. So from a physical point of view, I mean, I was that guy a long time ago, and how much was my bench and all that stuff. I'm talking I track my sleep as an example. I track my sleep daily. So I'm wearing the Aura ring right here.
Okay.
Tracks various data, and I track that in a spreadsheet daily, and then also not only quantitatively the metrics it gives me, but also qualitatively. Was I woken up by one of my kids in the middle of the night? Did I have a heavy meal? Did I eat late? Did I go to bed late? Was it a cold day? Etc. So then when I can track later and say, hey, that really affects my sleep. That really affects my HRV. That affects my deep sleep, etc. Things like that. So that's just one simple example of things that I track. For sure. I'm doing one big experiment I'm doing right now. I'm not sure if you're familiar with blood flow restricted training. So I have a theory. So the science is that when you do blood flow restricted training, you get increased growth factors and that sort of thing. So I'm doing an experiment right now. So I'd recently, I guess it's about 6 months ago now, had some blood work done. So I got some markers, and then I guess about we're in April now, so maybe about 4 or 5 months now. So not too long after I got blood work done, I started doing this, and I'm exclusively training that way, so that when I get to about the year mark, I'm going to get blood work done again, and I'm just curious to see if some of my blood markers haven't just improved by doing blood flow restricted training. So a bit of an experiment. So I'm just always experimenting with different things, different supplements, nutraceuticals, etc.
So when you're doing blood flow restricted training, I would assume that this is used kind of as a platform with traditional training. Like, there's no training for blood flow restriction. It's you use it when you're weightlifting, or use it when you're running, or something like that. Like it's used on top of
exactly.
a traditional training.
I'm doing my basic. I'm keeping the workout static for what I'm doing, number of reps, that for the most part, and then just doing blood flow restriction. So essentially bands on my legs and my arms. To reduce the blood flow, hence the name, and then do as much as I can, do my regular workout that I was doing beforehand, and then just to see the effects afterwards.
Oh, okay, very cool. Now, when you're tracking, you're doing better living through science. Actually, I'm going to come back to my last sentence here in a bit. You say better living through science. Now, to do this, how much technology are you leveraging to assist you in this matter? Like I saw you were wearing the ring. You said that you're doing blood marker testing, but how much technology have you incorporated into your personal life to be able to live this way and to achieve this goal?
Not as much as I'd like to. I would love to do more, but I certainly use technology. So just some of the, let's call it, tools or gadgets I have. So I have a full spectrum infrared sauna, which is probably the number one hack or thing that I do for health. So many factors are affected through that. I use the Muse headband for brain training and cognitive and meditation. I use a heart math device to get into a state of coherence for my HRV. What else do I have? I'm just looking around my office here. Even sometimes when I get a nagging little injury, sometimes, especially like I live up here in Canada, so half the year is like winter time, and you got your regular running shoe. You got barefoot and you're at home, and then you got your running shoes when it's warmer out, and then it's like sort of cold and there's a little bit of ice but not too much. You have a different one kind of boot, and then you have like it's -40 and you have like a ton of snow up 2 feet of snow. You got a different kind of boot. They all got different heels, right? So that can put a lot of pressure on or strain on your ankles, your Achilles, etc. And that's a weak part for me. So when I have something a little bit of nagging, I actually use a very I like to go in the sauna, but I have a infrared light that's I'm using off-label for so what it's not its intended purpose is for, just plugged in, and I just put it down on the ground right at my Achilles. So while I'm working on the computer or something, I'm just blasting infrared light at injury spots, and that's just a couple examples.
Have you seen good results with that, with the infrared treatment?
Oh yeah, it definitely helps. Like do that for 2 or 3 days for maybe an hour and a half a stint at a time, or basically whenever I'm at the desk working, and just the little nagging thing just goes away.
Yeah,
so I've actually heard. I haven't used this myself, obviously, or even my wife, but a friend who put me onto this said that his wife uses it for menstrual cramps, and it just really gets rid of her, cramps almost
very cool
instantaneously. So.
Yeah, no, I remember I did infrared therapy as part of my clinical training, but it's been so many years since I've had to leverage or even remember any of that knowledge, because most of my injuries I get are like macroscopic injuries. So
right.
I haven't even thought about light training for such a long time now. But it's good to see that more people have moved into using it for themselves, which is great. Because I do remember at the time it was a very solid way of treating a lot of like microscopic kind of injuries for like soft tissue and all that.
Probably the next little tool or hardware I'll probably get is probably a PEMF device, pulsed electromagnetic field device, just for treating nagging injuries. My girls, my wife went through this as well, and my girls take after her. But really fast growth spurts, so they get sort of growing pains, so to speak, and their particularly in their legs ache. So I'll probably get that relatively shortly here, just to give them some treatment every once in a while, just amongst other little ailments and that sort of things that can be worked on for sure. And maybe even do some protocols and put some on my brain and stimulate my brain as well. So.
I am 34 and I still remember my growing pains, and it's one of those, like, when you see those injuries on TV and you just kind of have that visceral flinch. And when I think back to those growing pains in my shins, and it's just like, oh, just never want to experience that again. I remember that was so incredibly painful. And when I was, like, so I'm 34 now, so when I was a kid, when I was 14, back in the 90s and in early 2000s, the science was not where it is now. I look back at the 2000s eras of science, and I just look at them like savages. Just all of it. We were not in any way, shape, or form where we are now. We were not even prepared for where science would take us.
You remind me of a story. Like I played football when I was younger, up until university, and unfortunately, I played defense for probably the first half of my football playing time, if you will. But unfortunately, I was part of two, let's call them gang tackles, where two different kids got their legs totally mangled, and you kind of get up off the pile and the kid's screaming, and you can see his kneecaps like facing the other way and that sort of thing. So whenever I watch football now on TV and they do the slow-mo camera and you see the ankle or whatever, just like I've been there, I've lived that before. So I totally get what you're saying.
Yeah, one of the most gruesome injuries I remember. Actually, it wasn't even during my clinical rotations. It was actually on TV, no less. It was an episode of WCW Nitro where one wrestler, he was like 7 feet tall, jumps off a turnbuckle, and just the whole leg just 180 degrees, and it's just like, oh, like just one of those injuries that you'll just never forget.
Yeah, I used to back in university, so I used to watch wrestling a ton back in the day, for sure.
Yeah. So now, let's get into how you got to this path actually, because one of the biggest things about a career path, especially now in this very very different time from our parents and our grandparents, where it was, find a company, stick it out, grind it out, and retire. We've moved into this very fluid kind of society where you shift careers, and not just laterally. You do whole world, like Mario level world skipping to a new career path. I've done it, you've done it, and you've, like I said, you and I were not too far apart in this, but I'm always very curious to know how you did this, where you came from, and what prompted you to take this very diagonal like move over. So would you mind covering that?
Sure. I think to really give the audience a sense of this, I need to go back and get into a little bit of my backstory here and lead up to what made the shift to what I'm doing now. So, first of all, my parents were immigrants to. I live in Canada. My parents were immigrants to Canada, and they came from two different places, and they came in their early to mid 70s, and they were North American food and lifestyle, excuse me, was completely foreign to them, right? They never had a hamburger before. They had never eaten a pizza before. Oh, you get chicken in a bucket. Like, they didn't know what these things were, right? And so they come here, and my family that was already here before them is like, oh, you got to try this. It's so great and everything like that. And they had come from hospitality industry backgrounds where they came from. So when they came to Canada, it was sort of the default to get into that. So they worked in restaurants, and they owned restaurants and owned hotels and bars and that sort of thing. That's what I grew up into. So I was always, as long as I can remember, I can't remember a time when I wasn't, always that chubby kid. Always had a couple extra pounds, and that sort of thing. And then from in a 4-year period, starting from when I started playing football, ironically enough, where just the only notion was really like bigger is better. So in a 4-year period, right in the my prime growth phase, prime maturity phase, I put on 100 pounds. Now, did I get stronger and everything? Sure, yes. Did I have put on muscle? Yes. But I just got very, very heavy. So at 18 years old, just after graduating high school. So I'm a little under 6 feet. So I'm 5'11" and change. At 18 years old, I was 270 pounds. So, you can do the math. I was morbidly obese at 18 years old. I should have been at my prime, right? But I was
18, 275?
270 is what I topped out at.
You and I were literally beat for beat the same person.
Yeah. So
I'm 5'10" and change, and I was like 270-ish. When I graduated.
Exactly the same. So and part of that was it was all sort of a couple things, mindset and culture, right? So it's like even when my parents came from meager beginnings, so there's just that sense of scarcity, and it's a scarcity mindset, so got to finish everything on your plate, and if you go to the buffet, better get your money's worth, and that sort of thing, and being around in the part of the hospitality industry, there was always restaurant food. Go in to where my dad worked, and just order whatever you want off the menu, and so it'd be like it was burgers and fries, type of thing. When I was in the last part of high school and into university, my parents had restaurants where they had a buffet. So on Monday, Tuesday, whatever, after what was left over from Friday, Saturday, Sunday, the weekend type of thing, there'd be just like leftovers, they'd bring it home. So all my friends thought like, man, you got the coolest lunches, because I'd be bringing like wings and ribs and stuff like that for like lunches. But I was just like eating this terrible, heavily processed, restaurant food all the time. So, and then in university, I got really into powerlifting. And me and my friends, all this bro science and all this kind of stuff, and the university I went to, a lot of visiting teams, a national level, Olympians and whatnot would come there to train. So we'd watch these guys. We wouldn't talk to them because we were too shy, but they'd be doing, exercise. We're like, oh, that's pretty cool. Let's try that. And anyway, long story short, I got really, really strong when I was in university. I could do tremendous amount, bench and, squat and deadlift and everything like that. And that caused a lot of injuries and overtraining and not training properly. But long story short, I was a really, really strong, but I was also just a strong fat guy.
Yeah.
And then I graduated and I got into the workforce. So when I went to school, I went and I got 2 degrees, but my main degree was business, specifically in accounting. So I'm an accountant. I still hold my accounting designation. So get a job, working in corporate world, and you're sitting at a desk all day. It's free popping juice in the fridge, donuts, cookies, whatever, like, at least a couple times a week, and you're just sitting around all the time. Yeah, so. But at least by that point, I had the notion of like, okay, well, I gotta, try and lose some weight here. And I've always struggled. And you get to that point where like, yeah, I'm dated and that sort of thing. But, it's kind of like, well, I'm getting into my mid-20s here, maybe want to settle down, find a girl, that type of thing. So I just started doing like chronic cardio. Like it seems like it's such a huge expense, but I bought like the best elliptical trainer, and I had bad knees, which I thought was from playing all football all those years, getting chop blocked and tackled and all that stuff. So I thought an elliptical trainer was really low impact. So I bought the best one I could afford. It was like way out, way out there for a price. But ironically enough, I still have it to this day, like, 20 years later or thereabouts. So quality.
Yeah,
buying
it's
quality
really you get what
matters.
you pay for.
Yeah, for sure. So, I just do chronic, cardio, and I still do a little bit of weights here and there. And then, I met, my love of my life, my wife, and we decided, like we're gonna have a destination wedding. So, let's look really good for our wedding photos. So basically like 6 or 7 months out, we essentially, looking back now and having the knowledge I have now, we essentially just tried to starve ourselves going into it. And we did lose weight for sure. And, get these beautiful pictures and everything. But, just all, that year following the first year of marriage, all that weight just sort of came back.
Yeah.
Pretty much. And when I look at our wedding photos now, I still cherish them. Obviously, one of the happiest days of my life. But I look now and I was like, oh God, I was still so, lost all that weight, but I was still so fat. Type of thing, right? But anyway, long story short, over university and the early work years, my weight just fluctuated. I'd lose 20 pounds, gain 20 pounds, lose 25 pounds, gain 25 pounds. I was always in this band, right? Just kind of in this cycle. And then a number of years ago, I picked up running. I thought, that'd just be a way to, seems what you do, and seems like runners are usually pretty skinny type of thing. So I really got into running. And then I'm a pretty competitive person, and sort of that when I stopped playing football, in university, that competitive spirit had been dormant for a while. And then, running, it's individual sport, but, you go into races and it's time and you're competing with other people. So really brought that back. So I just want to get better and better and better. And, 5 and 10Ks, and I was doing well. And, as an age grouper, it's, placing, top 10% in my age group. I wasn't winning races, or not many anyway. But, I was doing good. I was improving. And then I was okay, I got this down. Let's go up to the half marathon with the goal of doing like a marathon, right? And maybe even a triathlon sometime down the road. So I was just pounding the pavement. And with the type of job I had, again, sitting in front of a computer all day long, 5 days a week, I could really only get training in on the weekends. So, I do like, 12K on Saturday, and then 14K on Sunday, or, 18K one day, and then like, 20, building up that mileage. And essentially what I end up doing is I end up breaking myself down, and to the point where I end up hurting my back. So one day I was, I had seen the doctor, just for some routine stuff. And he's like, And so, I slowly sort of whittled down some of that weight, but I was still, what you call skinny fat. I'm sure
Yep.
everyone's kind of
Yep.
familiar with that. So my arms and my legs had gotten relatively lean, but I still had this big tire around my stomach. And you can see all the stretch marks from, again, I gained 100 pounds in 4 years. And then sort of slowly over time whittled it down, but I had all these stretch marks all over my body. So my doctor kind of made comments like, do you strength train? I'm like, not really anymore. I'm kind of more focused on endurance and doing these. Like, well, you might want to think about at least incorporating some weight training back in. So I was like, okay, kind of thought about that. So one day after doing a hard training run on Saturday, and then doing a hard training run on Sunday, my legs are killing me, my knees are all painful. I thought, I got a little extra time, maybe I should take up what the doctor said and do some strength training. So I had all this stuff around in my house, from before. So I just pick up, some dumbbells. The lightest weight, it was like 5 pounds or something like that. But my legs were killing me. My knees were sore. So I didn't bend properly. I just bent over at the waist to pick them up because it's 5 pounds, right? And I just felt something in my back right away. Oh, that's kind of weird. Okay. Oh, yeah. I better just rest it. So I rested for a whole week. And again, kind of did all my mileage on the weekends. And I was like, okay, I feel like 90%. So, I go for a run, at like 80% sort of capacity. And then I wake up the next day and I'm in so much pain. I'm in so much pain. So like, okay, well, I've obviously overdid it. I better rest another week. So I rest a whole another week. I'm like, well, I kind of feel like 70%. Like, I'll just go for like a jog with a buddy. And my buddy, is a lot shorter than me. He's got a shorter stride. Doesn't have, he's not as fast as I run. So I was like, yo, your pace, man. Whatever you want to do. I'm kind of not feeling 100%. Like, we'll just go at your pace. We didn't even make it like a kilometer, and I was like, just doubled over in pain. I'm like, man, can you walk me back to my car? I think something's wrong. So we head back to the car. The next day, I go to the doctor. He pokes and prods me, and he's like, yeah, you've got a bulging disc. To be determined after the fact, totally wrong diagnosis. So that started me in this path of 2 years of doing, going to chiro, physio, this kind of shot, that kind of shot, see this guy, see that guy, do these exercises, to find out that are wrong. They're actually hurting my back more. It's wasted 2 years of my health. 2 years of my health wasted in sort of the conventional medical system trying to figure out. Finally, I got so sick of it. I'm like, I'm going to go pay for an MRI out of my own pocket. I don't care. I call up. I was already on the waiting list, right? Again, I live in Canada, so kind of a sort of universal healthcare, socialized healthcare. I call up the place. I was like, look, I want to get an MRI. Like, I'm paying out of my own pocket. They're like, you can come tomorrow. Great. I don't know why I was on a waiting list for like 8 months or whatever, but I'm like, okay. So I go there, get it done, properly diagnosed. So I have degenerative disc disease in my L4, L5, L5, S1. So that's low back.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, so now we at least know what it is. So this bulging disc and this and that we've been trying to work on, getting shots and stuff, all for waste, all wasted because they were hitting the wrong area because they didn't do the proper testing right off the bat, right? So okay. So as good as my physiotherapist and my chiropractor and everything was like, okay, great, but we really can't do anything more for you. All you can do is keep strengthening your core with the exercises we've given you and we've sort of honed over time, but we can't really do anything more for that, right? So, okay. So I started just getting really interested into doing the research about this and learning about this. I missed one really important piece to my story that I should go back now before I go any further. So all through, I mentioned earlier, all this whole time, always being the chubby kid, always, being overweight all through growing up. I also got sick all the time. I'd always get chronic bronchitis infections like clockwork, like twice a year. When I got a little bit older in university and stuff like that, it'd be like more like 3 or 4 times a year. I mean, probably some of the partying and drinking and that sort of stuff didn't help any of that. But I'd like 3 or 4 times a year, always be really sick. Antibiotics, medication all the time. Then as I got older and was in the workforce and training, I get so sick that I couldn't run, I couldn't train. If you can't even go 10 meters without like coughing a lung out, you can't train. So I'd get all this progress, and then I'd get sick and I couldn't do anything for like 4 to 6 weeks. Then I finally get healthy, and then I'm like, okay, now you take a step backwards. And you like take 2 steps forward, you get sick again. Take a step backwards. That's this game I was playing. So so I'd already before I hurt my back, I was already starting to see a naturopath to try and figure out the autoimmune condition and what was going on, and changing supplementation around and that sort of thing, and that's sort of started the path of researching what works for me. But then when I hurt my back, and they're like, yeah, we can't really do anything for you. It's like this is not the answer. So I started doing research, and I ultimately found PRP, or platelet-rich plasma treatments. I can describe what that is if you don't.
Yeah. Please do.
Yeah. So basically, they do a blood draw of yourself and take blood, and then they spin it in a centrifuge, and the red blood cells and the white blood cells and the platelets all separate. And they take the platelets out, and then they take even just the best ones of them. So the platelets are sort of the healing antibodies that are in your own blood, and then they inject it at site. So if you have a shoulder problem, ankle or something, usually 1, maybe 2 treatments, depending on how badly you're injured, you're pretty much good to go. And I heard a lot of anecdotal evidence from coworkers and friends and stuff like that. It's kind of funny when you sort of stumble on something, that whole phenomenon too. Like once you get a new car, all of a sudden you see that same car everywhere, right? So once I was like, yeah, I'm thinking about doing this PRP. Oh, I know what that is. Oh, my friend did that. Oh, my wife did that. I was like, how come I never heard of this before? But all of a sudden, all these people sort of came out of the woodwork. But they told me right off the bat, low back is very, very tricky. This might take you 3 or 4 applications to see any really results. I'm like, okay, what do I have to lose? Again, out of my own pocket. This is not covered in where I live. And it's not an inexpensive procedure by any means. And basically, yeah, so they take the platelets and then they inject in site. So right in my L4, L5, L5S1. Very painful procedure. It takes you a couple days to recover, and you very gingerly move around, can't lift anything heavy, don't exercise, that sort of thing. So I end up doing, and so basically it's a 4 to 6 week cycle. So they kind of hit you, and you're kind of down, right? They're inducing inflammation, and then your body is going to recover from it. And then as that starts to wear off, then you hit it again in 4 to 6 weeks. Now again, it's not inexpensive, so I was kind of trying to push it out as far as I can. I'll do the 6-week plan. I just try to spread out the costs a bit. And after the first couple, it's like, okay, yeah, I'm marginally seeing some improvement, but keep going. So long story short, I end up doing 8 treatments kind of in that cycle, and then I did 2, after the fact, kind of on a yearly annual basis, just as sort of maintenance per se. Mm-hmm. But it took like 8 times. But where the real kicker was for me, so I just keep doing all this research, really digging into the science, and I come across some literature, and it, I was like, this is very interesting. So I'm there for my next procedure, and the doctor's prepping me and all that sort of stuff. Hey, doc, does this make sense? This is what I'm reading here. Am I interpreting the science right? If I eat low inflammatory, and we can talk about what that means later, but I said, if I eat low inflammatory, shouldn't this procedure work better? If I'm not inflamed in my gut or nutrition or anything, but let's call it primarily nutrition, is not inflaming my shoulder or something, even though you're injecting it at site, it's not getting diverted to like your gut or shoulder or knee pain or something like that. It'll work better if you have less inflammation in your body. And again, primarily I'm talking about via nutrition. Does that make sense? Am I understanding this right? He's like, oh, yeah, no, you totally understand that completely. So he must have read the expression on my face, because I was about to say, why the F didn't you tell me this before we started? I could have made improvements like before we even started day 1 type of thing. So he must have read the impression on my face, because he's like, I have to apologize. I'm so sorry. To be quite honest with you, people will not change their lifestyle. They want the magic pill. They want the magic procedure. I'm ashamed to say, but I kind of just stopped telling people, I should have mentioned it to you, but nobody wants to change their lifestyle. So I kind of just forgot or whatever. And I was like, no, you don't understand. I'm not running, right? I couldn't run. I was in too much pain. I obviously couldn't golf anymore, which was a big family activity. But the real kicker, which I maybe should have mentioned earlier, so at all while this is going on, my youngest daughter was just a baby. So with degenerative disc disease in low back, I had no flexion, so I couldn't bend over. I couldn't tie my shoes. I couldn't put on my socks. That's when. But the real kicker was my daughter, my youngest daughter, was a baby. I couldn't pick her out of her crib. She'd be like, Dad, pick me up, and I couldn't bend over. I'd have to sit down in a chair very gingerly, have my wife pick her up, put her in my lap, and then I was fine. I could play with her and all that. But then I'd be like, honey, can you take her? Because I couldn't even get out of the chair with her little weight of 10 pounds, 12 pounds. I couldn't even like get out of a chair with that extra. It was hard enough just getting myself out. So I didn't recognize it in myself at the time, but I probably was depressed, and battling depression at that time. So I said to the doctor, I was like, no, I'm not golfing, I'm not running, I can't even pick up my daughter for God's sakes. Like I'm doing this. So I cold turkey that day. I cut out, and I've refined it over time for sure, but what I thought was inflammatory to me at that time, I just cut out all the junk food, cold turkey. And the next time the procedure, I had to do it again. I felt better, but wasn't quite where I wanted to be. I recovered a lot better. Like instead of taking 2 days to recover, I was recovered in like a day. Like, oh, there's something to this. Okay, my flexion, I was able to bend just a little bit further. I was always having a little bit incremental improvements, but I was like, oh, this seems like a little bit better. So it's hard to tell. Is it just because now I've done 3 or 4, or is it the inflammation? Like there's too many variables, right? But like, okay, I'm just gonna stick with this. The next time, I'm like, basically the next morning after sleeping. I mean, it is painful when it goes in, and you very gingerly afterwards. You can't even drive yourself home. Basically like someone picks you up, and I'm lying flat in the car as best I can to get home. But I wake up the next day and I'm like, I think I can jump on the elliptical. I'm not killing myself, but I'm moving. I'm like, yeah, I'm totally recovered way better. So I'm like, there was totally something to it. I just keep up with this. I'm just my purpose, my why. I realized the pain I had, and again that depression of not being able to pick up my daughter, just stuck with me. It still does to this day, but I just stuck with it. And then one day, as life goes on, I'm working full time. I was doing these procedures on Fridays so that I could recover on the weekend and hopefully be ready to go on Monday as the regular routine, sitting at a desk all day. I'm just going on with things, and as life happens, sometimes you don't get to laundry and whatever. And I go to we're a little bit behind, so I go to grab a pair of pants out of the back of the closet, and I put them on, and I was like, what the heck, these don't even fit. So I call my wife. I'm like, honey, I think I might have lost some weight here. And she's like, what are you, an idiot? Of course you have. So you can see it in your face. I'm like, I was never a big scale guy or anything like that. And I was just like, really? She's like, yeah, like, what are you talking about? Of course you have. You've lost, like, yeah. So I jump on the scale, and boom, 40 pounds of fat in like 5 months, 6 months. All from just changing like, my nutrition. I wasn't exercising anymore. I was actually exercising less because of the back pain, and there's not really nothing that was changed. So, and the reason I know it was fat is, again, going back to, I was already interested in this biohacking. So I had done electrical impedance testing. So if you know what that is, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I had done that again before I kind of hurt my back, to sort of just gauge where I was at as far as running performance. So I knew what my water weight is, what my bone density was, lean muscle mass, fat mass, etc. So I was like, so I right away, as soon as I could, make an appointment, go do it again. Within like less than a few days, less than a week, I go get it done again. So it's about a year period in between, and I'm still a relatively young guy. So bone mass exactly the same, lean muscle mass pretty much exactly the same, water weight, same. The only variable is fat mass. So changing my nutrition, I dropped fat, not muscle, not anything else, just dropped fat. I was like, huh, there's something there. That was the first inclination. What was the real thing for me? So again, I'm going about my business. I'm slowly losing this weight. The last bit came off really, really quickly here. I run into people, in the street, at the mall, former coworkers, friends I hadn't seen in a while, and they're like, hey, and some people didn't even recognize me. I was like, hey, buddy, how's it going? They're like, oh, hey, Deepak, oh, how's it going? Like they didn't, like, how's it going? I'm like, oh, good. And they're like, hey, are you okay, man? Like, do you have cancer? Like people thought I had cancer because I lost so much weight so fast. I was like, no, I'm feeling the best I've ever felt. So much more energy, a little pep in my step and all this stuff. So people are like, hey, like, what are you doing? I was like, hey, this is what I learned. And I'm sending them websites and like, read this book. And oh, here's an article you might find interesting. I'm doing that sort of thing. I'm sort of slowly, informally started coaching people already. So I'm doing this for like a while, and then finally it just dawns on me, I really like this. I really like helping people achieve their health goals and giving them the knowledge that I've learned and sharing it and spreading it around. And probably not by coincidence at the same time, the company I was working for, was going through some troubles, and the industry was going through some troubles, and it wasn't the happiest place. So I mulled on that for a while, and I said, I'm just gonna start doing this. So I incorporated a company, probably did things in the wrong order, but I incorporated a company and all that sort of stuff. And I was like, well, I better get some knowledge behind me. So I did a couple of designations, all part time. So I still kept my full time job as an accountant. Started studying evenings and weekends, lunch hours, and writing my exams on the weekends and that sort of evenings, that sort of thing. And then and doing that for a while, and then I just started coaching people, part time. And then about almost coming on almost 2 years ago now, I guess, the universe had a bigger plan for me and released me from doing that job that I was doing, and I started doing that full time. Now, full disclosure, I still have one foot. I do have one contract where I still do some accounting work for a buddy's company. He kind of reeled me back in. I said sure, but yeah, for the most part, I just now help people, coach people again to be to realize that exceptional person that's inside of them. So that's kind of brought me. That's sort of my journey. Oh, and back to the chronic bronchitis and all that stuff. I shouldn't leave that part out. Ever since I made those dietary changes and sort of brought inflammation down and some of these other hacks, I haven't been sick in like 6 years.
Wow.
From someone who used to have bronchitis, antibiotics 2-3 times a year, haven't been sick in 6 years. I might get a little sore throat for like a day. I might have sniffles for a couple days, but that's it. I haven't taken a medication in 6 years.
That is amazing. So, yeah, that is quite the journey to have gone through. Now,
yeah, for sure.
So now that you've moved to doing this, could we put this in the realm of consulting? I know it's coaching, but is it like because consulting and coaching, I'm not sure if there is a big divergence between the two, or could they be considered in the same path?
I think you could consider them in the same path.
In the same path.
To a degree. I think consulting might maybe. There's definitely a lot of overlap for sure.
There is. Okay.
Sure. Yeah.
So with that, then, in terms of now that you've moved to doing this full time, have you had to take on like new skills, like new adoption skills, like marketing and all that kind of stuff, or have you figured out a different avenue to grow this new venture of yours?
No, most definitely. Yeah, technology for sure. Using different platforms. Like again, I was an accountant. Like I know how to use Excel. That's not a problem. And your basic, Microsoft type of products and that any office, I had that down pat. A lot of other platforms, I was never on social media. I was never a bigger social media guy, but like I needed to learn, some of those to just for promotion. Marketing, huge for sure. Me and my wife did have a business in the past, our own company, but it was more of like an investment holding type of company. So yeah, that marketing, I never really had to like go market myself. The most would be like, we're always marketing ourselves for no matter what we do, right? But like you gotta, do you want to get that next promotion? You want to move to a job? There's that. But I had to like literally like get out there and figure out what works for me. And more stumbles than successes for sure. But you just got to try things and you just got to hustle, right? Once you got to kind of get that. And you might have to hustle for sure to get your first job, and I certainly did to get my first, corporate job, and then if you want to like, get that promotion, whether internally or move outside, you got to hustle a bit. But when you're your own business owner, or have your own business, a small business owner, you got to hustle. I'm hustling all the time, and with where we're at right now with, this, coronavirus and COVID and self-isolation and businesses and non-essential services being shut down, a lot of my business, so I have a bunch of different sort of revenue streams. A bunch of those have been closed down to me, so I've just been hustling right now like crazy, just trying to open up new business avenues that might not show fruit right now, but hopefully the relationships and whatnot will bear fruit later on down the road and just make me come out of this situation even stronger and with more clients and what have you. So yeah, definitely a lot of skills to learn. Besides, going to school for accounting and business, and then having to go and learn about the body and physiology and nutrition and all that stuff, sort of things too, right? It was like totally, you know, different parts of the brain, are in different material for sure, right? So, and you know that you have a kind of a diverse background as well, right? It's totally different skill sets and different type of knowledge to have for sure. So yeah, definitely, and it's still hustling, still learning to this day.
And that's totally fair. Now, when you're doing your marketing, you said that you had to go learn like social media and that kind of stuff. Are you leaning more one way or the other, like traditional physical marketing? Are you leaning more towards more abstract digital marketing, or are you kind of doing a mix of the two? Because the thing is, when like I myself, I run Literex Media, and I do consulting on my side for getting issues like this started, but I've leveraged more into actual more digital and kind of face-to-face presence, but I never really leveraged like traditional marketing. Like I never did pamphlets and brochures and any of that. I always just like did more face-to-face talking with people than anything else, and primarily word of mouth is my biggest marketing I have. Have you gone one way or the other, or are you kind of just like utilizing are you kind of just like saying just go with every tool available and just figure it out on the fly?
So yeah, at the beginning it was kind of like, let's throw spaghetti at the wall and see what sticks. So I've done the flyers, pamphlets, that sort of thing. That's nothing's ever really borne fruit for me. Being a relatively still a young business and trying to keep costs as low as possible, as manageable as possible. I didn't really go and like do magazine spreads or that kind of more expensive type of things. What I found the best for me as far as finding clients, number one by far is just word of mouth and referrals. Because of my journey through back pain, there's a couple of, I consider them, well, I think they're now friends. They started as acquaintances, but I think we've become friends now, where if they hear of anyone who's got any sort of back problem, you talk to Deepak. Deepak's your guy. I've become this low back pain guy, at least in my local area. Now, all those people don't necessarily translate into clients, but people certainly get referred to me that way. The other big way is I'm not doing it currently, but I have done Facebook advertising to drive people to a webinar that I used to run. I'm going to resurrect that here this year for sure. So that was another way. But what I've also done, much like yourself, is just leverage contacts and relationships. So again, I'm an accountant, CPA. I still hold my designation. I keep up with that. I work damn hard for it. I'm not going to let it just go away. But with those contacts that I have, I've actually have a course, a health course that I provide to accountants via CPA. That's for credits. As a professional designation, there's a continuing education that they need to do, and I pitched them, and it took a long time, but I got a course developed for them so that people can go to get credits, a health course, and I'm trying to leverage that now to other organizations as well. Again, some of the CPA firms, I've approached them, and a couple of them I've done presentations and talks. They're again paying gigs, and then. And just doing some more of that. And as a couple, again, through personal contacts and just hustling, I work at a couple clinics. Well, I was working. Right now, they're all shut down.
Right.
Where I do various things. One clinic I just do nutrition there. I'm just their nutrition person. Another clinic they already had a nutrition person, but they didn't have a fitness person. So I do functional fitness for and their clientele is a little bit on the older side, so 50 plus. So I do sort of healthy aging, functional fitness in that clinic. So, a little bit there, through partnerships, a little bit through corporate, and a little bit on my own personal, and, kind of, putting all those things together to sort of build up my my clientele.
That is very interesting. Going a little bit back, using your training as a CPA credit, like very very different from, like, I come from the healthcare industry, continuing it as well, and that's very interesting that you were able to use this health focus into actual translating into continuing ed credits for your prior designation. Was that hard to do? Was that something that, like, didn't take, like I'm sure you had to develop the course like you said, but was it hard to kind of do that pitch? Did you have to go through a board? Did it have to go through approvals?
Yeah, it was a long process for sure. So I started with the provincial body where I live in here. I live in Alberta in Canada. So luckily I knew someone there from my previous work and volunteer work and that sort of thing. So I again tapped my network, got in front of that person, and then that eventually led. And this is probably like almost a year-long process. Then get with their staff or the right department, and then have a pitch with them, and then and then submit a proposal, and then sort of have them review, and then they tweaked it, and I just kind of proposed something a lot. I mean, you got to shoot for the stars, right? If you're not gonna shoot for the stars, then what are you doing, right? So I pitched something maybe a little bit more ambitious than they were ready for an accounting designation. But they said, well, how about let's take it back and just focus on one aspect. So I did. I took it back, quickly reformatted, my outline, and they said, okay, let's give it a try. So they rubber stamped it, and only then, after I had sold it, then I went and built the course. So luckily, fortunately for me, they put me in to sort of, they said, okay, we're going to put you in sort of our winter session. So they kind of have courses grouped by sort of spring, summer, which there's not a lot, sort of then the fall, and sort of then the winter, sort of pre Christmas and then sort of after Christmas type of thing. So the same course could run like once every session type of thing. So they said, okay, we'll put you in the winter session. So I'm like, okay, sure, great. Which actually gave me a few months to actually build it. Because if they were like, hey, can you do this like in 2 weeks? And I'd be like, sure, no problem. But then I would have been like, flat out building the course before that. So they luckily it just worked out that way that I had time to build the course. So I built the course and then delivered it. And now I can take that same course that I put all the effort in, and then now try and repurpose it and sell it, so to speak, in other jurisdictions or for other organizations and what have you. So it was a very long process and there was multiple steps, and everywhere along the way to get into any organization, getting the right person and even getting time to pitch them, that sort of thing. It takes a while, but you just got to keep hustling and working at it, right? So.
Oh, that's totally fair. Now, have you leaned more into like a corporate clientele base where you do like big packages kind of thing, or are you doing more one-on-one private clientele base?
So right now, I'd say just from a clientele mixture, it's more one-on-one right now.
Okay.
I'm trying to get my foot in the door with the corporate to sort of hey, let me do like a lunch and learn or breakfast and learn, a 1 hour type of thing. Get a feel for people, and you may or may not get some people like, hey, I like what you say, like tell me more, and then maybe they become a one-on-one client. But I'm using that as a stepping stone to build trust and a relationship with the corporations. Like, hey, like what are you guys doing for your wellness plan or your whatever, like, can I play a bigger role? And so I'm using sort of a lunch and learn or a 1 hour seminar to sort of get my foot in the door to hopefully build on something bigger, in the future, right? And a lot of corporations are there's a lot of bureaucracy. Sometimes it depends on the corporation, right? But a lot of bureaucracy, and you gotta build slowly, and they're not just gonna write like, hey, you're our guy now. You take care of everything. Like, we don't know anything about you, but like just take care of everything, right? So you got to build that trust and everything. So I anticipate that might take some time, but the first client, corporate client that I did a presentation to, we're now in talks for doing a second one, but now virtually instead of doing it in person, doing a virtual one now, right? So.
Right. No, that is extremely interesting. Now, because it's weird, I'm trying to figure out how I want to phrase this, because one thing I always have my guests do, because we're coming up on our hour here. And one thing I always have my guests do is I always have them talk about maybe 5 things that they would advise anyone coming into this profession who sees this interview, sees that, this is what they want to do, and just getting into it. What would be 5 things you tell somebody new who's maybe coming out of like university or maybe going into university and still trying to figure out like what they want to do. And they're like, I want to do this, but I don't know how to get started. Because that's the thing. Getting started in almost any profession, especially if you're going to be an entrepreneur, is extraordinarily hard. And ask any entrepreneur out there, they will tell you that. It will not be an easy road for you. I'm sure you've experienced the same trials and tribulations I have, launching your own company. And what would be, because with your profession, it's very unique where, it is health focused, but it's a different avenue of health versus like, going to be a medical pharmaceutical consultant or whatever.
Yeah, for sure. So first of all, I want to say, and I think this is a great question that you asked your guest to do, because I've been on some other podcasts and I've had people reach out to me afterwards, who sort of track me down and say like, hey, I heard you on the podcast and I wasn't sure if this was right for me, but I heard you and your story and, we have one or two little inklings the same. It's like, I know I can do this now, like, thank you very much. And it's like, that is just so gratifying for me. And I don't view anyone as, and there's so many people who need help with their health specifically. I don't view anyone ever as a competitor. Like there's room for all of us. But that was so nice to hear from a person that, my story or resonated with them for them to like get them over that hump of their fear of like, is this for me to go forward? So I think this is a great question. So number one, I think you need to have passion for whatever you're doing, whether it's entrepreneurship, your own business, working for, the man in a corporate, whatever. You should have passion for whatever you're doing, or, with your hobbies, whatever. So have passion. Obviously for me, going through my own health challenges, knowing what I went through and never wanting to go back, and helping people see that in themselves. That's my passion. So I guess one, having passion. Two, specifically to the healthcare, I guess for anything for entrepreneurs, find your niche. If you're going to be a dog walker, as an example, like, are you going to be only big dogs or only little dogs or some combination? Are you going to try and, be everything? Or are you going to have that niche like, I have a great temperament with pit bulls and I only walk pit bulls and they're the toughest, so I'm going to charge a premium. Whatever it is, like niche down. I don't think enough people niche down. And I certainly was guilty of this beginning, trying to be, for all people. And probably to a degree, I still am. But I'm trying to get my niche more focused, again, to those who want to know more about biohacking, who want to know more about advanced, scientific and fringe, modalities and want longevity. I'm narrowing my focus ever more to that. I'm not quite there yet, but so totally niche down would be number two. Really focus. And I think three, educate yourself. That doesn't mean necessarily getting designations and letters behind your name. That means just constantly learning about everything, what other people are doing. Whether, and again, I don't really see anyone as competitors. We're all just in the same space. But what are they doing? Reach out to them. Be happy to help. People reach out to me. I'm happy to talk about what I'm doing or what's worked for me, what's not for you. Just reach out to people. But also in the education, learn about what you don't know, whether it be technology platforms, social media, marketing. You don't know what you don't know, right? So you got to get out there and just experience and learn new things. And regardless if you're an entrepreneur, have your own business or not, I just truly feel like we should always be constantly learning. If you're not learning, I think you're slowly dying. That's what I believe. So and it's certainly if you're an entrepreneur, you got to keep learning. Like right now, I'm the end of 5 weeks. Right, we've basically been in this pandemic for 6 weeks now, going on 6 weeks.
Yeah.
Someone I follow, a business coach that I've never taken his full course, but I've dibbled and dabbled a little bit, and I certainly follow him. When this all happened, he pivoted his business over a weekend, and he thought there's so many people who are struggling, small business owners. I'm going to do like a masterclass series, to help these people out. And I just jumped on that training. Some of it, yeah, I've heard this before. I know this stuff. Some of it's like, yeah, I know that, but have never really implemented it, but I better start implementing it. Other things like, blow my mind. It's helped me try and pivot myself, my own business. Like I said, some of these clinics that I worked at where I was generating revenue are just closed. Yeah. It's just done. So I'm pivoting. I'm trying to build relationships so that when we come out of this, I'm better off. So constantly educating. I know that's only 3 things, but I probably rambled on long enough here.
No, so. You're totally. Is there 2 more you want to do, or you're good at 3?
I think I'm good at. I think I'm
You
good
think
at
you're
three.
good at 3?
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, there you go. Well, that is first of all, that's great. That's great advice. One of the biggest things, I've always been a proponent of constantly learning. It's literally all I've done since we went into lockdown. I crank out anywhere between 1 course a day and 5 courses a week. Anywhere between like that kind of range, because a 5-hour course you don't want to sit through in a single sitting. You'd go crazy. But one of the biggest things I've been doing is constantly learning. Between the time I was applying for positions and now, I've added what has to be 7 or 8 more computer languages behind my designation just since then. And it's one of those things that I'm not seeing enough people learning or wanting to learn during this pandemic. I'm seeing a lot of Netflix being watched. Netflix's numbers are through the roof. I'm seeing a lot of Amazon Prime being watched, but I'm not seeing anyone saying, I'm constantly trying to learn and improve. And this is where I kind of deviate a lot from the I guess it would be altruistic kind of mentality of global like lifting of rising tides raising all boats kind of thing, because I'm seeing a lot of people who I was competing with for jobs. They're watching Netflix, and I've been off here making myself like building up my skill set. I just haven't been saying anything because I'm like, I don't know if that's gonna help or hinder me if I say something. So I've just been kind of staying quiet, just silently like tinkering away in the background on my end. And it's one of those things I wish I could be saying, people need to learn more. People need to like be like constantly growing more skill sets, make yourself more marketable. Because one thing you and I have here in our province is we have very high unemployment right now. We've seen businesses close, people laid off, and coming back to normality when this whole thing is all said and done, the pool of competition is going to be crazy high. You are going to be, new grads, old grads, experienced people. I know people of 20 years who got laid off, and they're in the same pool now of competition. It's just like, I just cannot believe people aren't kind of like, seeing that future sight. But I might just being overly paranoid about the state going back.
I got a couple thoughts on what you just said there. So
Yeah.
On the unemployment so number one, for sure, I think there's going to be a ton of competition. I think we're going to have a new way of business going forward. Depending on the industry, I guess, how quickly people will come back and that sort of thing. I think, it's smart on your part and anyone's part to get more educated and get more knowledge and more skills now. Because when it kind of comes like, I guarantee if I was a hiring manager, I would ask, let's call it 3 months, 6 months from now, whenever we're done this, and I'm like, now I'm ready to bring people back or hire new grads or whatever. I would certainly, and I used to be a hiring manager when I was at one of the companies I worked at. I had a team of 25 that reported to me. So I've done this before. I would certainly ask this question. In self-isolation, lockdown, whatever terminology you want, what did you keep your time with? Busy. Hey, and spending time with your family, there's nothing wrong with that. But it's just like, yeah, I'm just gonna watch Netflix, just chilled and sort of wait for. Versus, the other person's like, well, I decided I was gonna learn Spanish and blah 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 and computer languages, or I made it a goal to read a book a day or whatever. Something like, you're more impressive. That's maybe that's just me personally, but for sure. And to your other point, I certainly seen that too. I mean. A lot of the people in my circle of influence are small business owners or entrepreneurs, et cetera. So, we're all trying to, not all, I shouldn't say that. Many of them are trying to better themselves, for sure, or come out of this, ahead of the game, or they've had to pivot for whatever because they've lost business or their business is closed and trying to figure things out. So certainly that not all business owners are, and some of them I'm trying to like, come on, like you can do this. Like we can work together, and they're just, no, we're just gonna, blinders on, and hopefully this is all done in 6 weeks or whatever, and hopefully we can survive. Okay, I mean I can't do it for you, right?
Right. Yeah.
For sure. But like myself, like I mentioned this, this 5 weeks in, I've been doing this master class, 1 hour a day. And I'm not getting designations. It's just for my own knowledge and hopefully some skills that I can, and some ideas I can implement. There's this parenting course that's been going on. And I've been listening to that. I think, like I mentioned earlier, I think we can always improve. I don't think I'm a terrible parent, but am I the best parent I could be? Probably not either, right? I'm all about optimization. Right. So if I can learn some skill or some tools to help me be a better parent, so I'm listening to this webinar series that's on parenting. And then, like we're probably, and then just other health things like vaccines and whatever. Like I'm watching, documentaries and that sort of thing on various health topics. Well, just again, to have a better knowledge for myself, for sure.
Yeah, no, very, very cool. Well, I think that is going to do it for our time. We are a little over an hour, but I really appreciate you sticking around to continue talking. But thank you so much for joining me on this episode of Button Mash. It's been incredibly interesting to watch your journey from CPA to biohacker. Once again, it's not a career pivot that you see all too often, but it's one of the ones that when you find it, you want to know more about it, definitely, for sure.
Yeah, I appreciate that, and I appreciate you taking the time and having me on. Gratitudes to you for that. I appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, thank you so much. So, ladies and gentlemen, sorry, I have to green screen this way. This is, ladies and gentlemen, I really want to thank my guest, Deepak, over here. If you guys want to know more about it, his information or ways to reach out to him will be listed in the description box down below. If you guys like this episode, or you guys have different guest ideas you want to see, please leave them in the comments down below. But my name is Arif. This has been Deepak, biohacker extraordinaire, and I will see all of you guys on the next episode of Button Mash. And remember, if you are the smartest guy in the room, find yourself a new room to be in. Have a good night, guys. Bye.
Thank you.